It's the Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by ANZ Home Loans for financial well-beings.
Hey, welcome back to another week of real estate news from coast to coast. We have had once again another very busy week. Hope you've been busy chasing your real estate dreams. We are up to a Sunday as our weekend continues, July the 20th. And Donald Trump, you might have seen this yesterday, has filed a $10 billion lawsuit against Rupert Murdoch, News Corp and the Wall Street Journal, accusing them of libel over a story linking him to Jeffrey Epstein. The article claims that Trump sent Epstein a birthday note back in 2003 featuring a sexually suggestive drawing and cryptic message. Trump, who denies the allegations, vowed to make Murdoch testify. I mean, it's one thing to make news organisations cave, like was the case with the ABC, and pay damages to Trump. But Murdoch, I can't see him doing that. And I do wonder if we're going to see the Fox network's position change now for Trump, which could be a major shift with the way Fox has supported him over the last 10 years. Coming up next, we've got your property week, and we're going to kick that off with Graham Cook, who was here on Monday from Finder. Ben Chick, he was here talking about Mackay and the investing opportunities there. Veronica Morgan in Sydney, we talked about this 3.9 metre wide Sydney mansion in Darling Point that is just sold for just a shade under 20 million. And Jeremy Britton in Brisbane, he was talking about property investing, including in Bali. So that is all coming up next.
Don't navigate the real estate market alone. Let us help guide you in the world of real estate every day. Make better informed decisions with the latest news and insights.
Definitely all-consuming. I bought myself a few years ago, and in a couple of years running up to the final purchase, it became a little bit of an obsession, to be honest. We went to multiple different auctions and kept not being able to get the property we were looking at, and you kind of become obsessed with tracking all the auctions that are happening around you until we finally adjusted our budget, and actually were passed in on the auction for the house we currently live in, and they had to get into a trade war, the developer trying to sell it afterwards. So it was all very dramatic. But once you get to the other end of it, yeah, it's definitely a little bit of tranquil peace that you find, I think, in your new house.
Well, she sort of said about herself that she had a property personality disorder. Now, she's a psychologist, so they've got names for everything. She'd have a name for you, Graham, with your 2-year search. But yeah, I thought quite funny, a psychologist having a property personality disorder.
It's pretty funny. And yeah, I think that peace and tranquility lasts for a little while, and then you start thinking, I wonder if we could get this better or that better. And currently we're now looking at the market again, potentially. So, you get satisfaction for a while anyway.
The thing about online searching, particularly if you're looking at moving perhaps from your state into another state, the photography these days, the video, it's like a dessert if you find properties that you like. I've been guilty of this myself. I've almost been living in the property as I've been searching it, going, yeah, I can imagine myself living in that bedroom. Yeah, I like that lounge, a few little tweaks here and there, a little bit of Reno with carpet. I could really spruce this up quite nicely.
Have you had the experience where you turn up to look at something you've been looking at online and it doesn't quite look the same? The fisheye lenses that they use tend to make the spaces look an awful lot bigger than they actually are, and you're kind of standing there going, hold on, this place feels far smaller than it looks online.
Well, I'm a filmmaker, so I sort of know my lenses, and I can tell when something is not quite what it's being represented with a fisheye lens that you're talking about, something that is expanding. You can normally just see the curvature and how that changes. But yeah, I think a lot of people get very disappointed on space. That's the main thing, right? You go in and go, oh man, this is a lot smaller.
Yeah. And then they get the professionals in to do the place up, and it looks like a fancy hotel, and then when you actually purchase the house, all the furniture gets removed and it feels a little bit more lifeless than it did when you were doing the viewing potentially,
Yeah. Perhaps we should just have a look at the median house prices in the broader Mackay region, experiencing significant capital growth, with one report indicating a median house price just over 621k and units 412,000. So the buyer demand seems to be there in Mackay.
I think the key thing there, Craig, is that we've probably, good or bad, been a bit of a hidden secret. It's funny as all the other prices around the country have started to, in someone else's language, but get alarming. Ours is now really affordable, and certainly the last 12 months, but even the 24 months period, we've seen so many other people find that what they can traditionally buy down south or somewhere else along the eastern seaboard, or more importantly, what they can sell down there and then buy here is, we've probably been on the cheap stakes and we're slowly catching up.
You've been slowly catching up for a little while now, and a significant portion too of real estate inquiries in Mackay are coming from outside of the region, with approximately, this is such a big number, 50% approximately of sales inquiries coming from outside the area. That does suggest the growing interest from southern buyers and investors drawn to Mackay's relative affordability, also that whole economic stability, and then you've got off the back of those two, the lifestyle offerings.
I think the key thing is that so many locals live here, love it. I love the fact that there's always going to be more locals. If people down south here at least gave us the opportunity and came and had a look at Mackay, spent some time. Ultimately, we've probably been regarded as a mining town for too long. And now that we've got more stability with agriculture, industry, and obviously we still do have the mines, but like today's obviously the middle of winter. I think it's the lows 17 and the highs 25. So for those that are freezing their bums off down south and those that travel here, and this is a really peak time for us because so many people are travelling here to get out of there, the spillover effect of the ones that stay is great.
Yeah, and you've also got some anecdotal stories because, as you say, people can make this wrong assumption that all you are is another mining town. But tell us the story. You've got somebody that's going to be working for you and she came into the area not really fully appreciating what was there.
Yeah, it's really cool, actually. She's actually from the UK and spent some time in New Zealand and lived down south, but did the touristy travel up and down the coast and saw most of our regional towns, and then went back down south and had this forelonging to come back. But out of all the other places along the east coast, she said, Mackay just feels right. It's still close enough to everything, but it's not a really busy city, but it offers all the things that people want. And for her, it was really important that she wanted to be near the ocean, near the water, but still be able to find good employment, get well paid and, enjoy the lifestyle as much as just living in a town.
Welcome back, Veronica, onto the Real Estate Breakfast. It's an interesting one. You've hit retirement age and then suddenly you decide, hang on, I can't quite find what I want in the marketplace. Things are expensive. Let's renovate.
Yeah. Hello, Craig. Good morning. Nice to be chatting about this with you. And it is an interesting one because you're absolutely right that, governments talk about doing all sorts of things such as, changing stamp duty, for example, or lots of commentators do anyway, in order to get older people to sell up their family home and downsize. And yet, even if you did that, I would argue that that's not the main reason that people aren't downsizing. There are a lot of other reasons behind it. And one is that, as you've alluded to, is that they find it difficult to find something to downsize to in the area that all their well-established links and all their contacts, their friends, their doctor, their hairdresser, all that sort of stuff in the suburb that they're currently in. So what do people do under those circumstances? And there's a whole market out there in, stair lifts and, and internal elevators as a result.
Yeah, no, it's really, really interesting. And the last thing that somebody wants to do as they're heading into retirement or they are retired is to do a renovation. Let's be quite clear on that. That is the very last thing on their agenda. But as you say, if the stock ain't there, they got to live somewhere, right?
Well, that's it. And also, I think a lot of people do resist that idea of going into retirement living. And so, that's a totally different type of property ownership than your own home. A lot of people will recognise that they're going to lose quite a lot of the equity that they've built up over the years if their own home is their main asset. They might have adult kids that are discouraging them from that as well because they're thinking their own inheritances. But moving into a retirement village has a whole bunch of connotations around it. It's God's waiting room, and and there's a lot of resistance for making that step. So therefore, if they're not yet at that point, but they are starting to lack mobility, and the family home that they've been in for decades is not really fit for purpose, that's when they're going to start thinking, well, if, I don't want to move into a retirement village, I'm not ready, but I need to do something. That is when they do turn to do the one thing that you wouldn't expect them to, and that is renovating.
Just how obsessed are people when it comes to buying these exclusive properties in Sydney, these mansion areas, regardless of the price? The one that's been reported on is this 3.9 metre wide Sydney mansion in Darling Point, just sold for $19.9 million. If you look at the per square metre rate, it's up there, 94 grand.
Look, it's funny because $1 per square metre is always higher with smaller properties than with larger properties. And it's the same with land size. In a suburb where you'll have, small blocks and large blocks, I've plotted this out many, many times. So that's not unusual that you would have a very small property. And of course, in Darling Point is, one of Sydney's or one of the country's most exclusive locations. Whether you call it a mansion, I'm not sure. It's more likely wedged between two mansions. It's very skinny. They've made the most out of it, I have to say. If you could flip it to say, you could say, that's prestige end of the market, that's crazy. But you could also flip it to say is by far the cheapest house in Darling Point, the cheapest waterfront on Sydney Harbour. I would hazard in that part of Sydney Harbour that is in the eastern suburbs. It's a bargain if you look at it from that perspective.
207 square metres, they are saying. It highlights, as you say, Sydney's intense property values. The apartments have achieved higher per square metre figures like Bondi Penthouse at $126,000 and Australia's most expensive home, One Sydney Harbour's Penthouse exceeding $100,000. So yeah, it's a lot of money, but you're probably right if you hold on to that for a few years. Given the location, it is going to keep appreciating whether it's 207 square metres or not.
Well, I mean, it's the entry level to that suburb, and every suburb has its entry level properties. But funnily enough, entry level don't often perform as well as the rest of the market. Like, for example, I looked at the last time that property sold, which is in 2021, so a little bit less than 4 years ago, so almost 3.5 years ago. And over that time, it made a gain of 26%, right? So it's a capital gain. Now, I don't know whether they renovated in that time or whether there was additional costs, but the actual Sydney median house price, according to CoreLogic, over that time, I did a quick ChatGPT check, so we know it might be slightly wrong, but the Sydney median house price went up by 36% in that time. So there's a 10% discrepancy there. This mansion, if you want to call it that, underperformed compared to the Sydney median. So whilst it looks on paper, you think, wow, that's $4 million over nearly 4 years, looks like a lot of money. But as a percentage of what they paid for it, when, the original owners or the last owners, it's not that impressive.
You say that you love your daughter dearly, but you'd prefer to pay more of the deposit so she is the owner of the property exclusively. But your daughter is very independent and wants a smaller deposit from you. Well, first off, wow, your daughter doesn't really sound like the typical kids leaning on their parents for helping them with the deposit, which you can't blame the kids in today's market given the real estate conditions. So first off, much respect to your daughter for being this independent person that you say that she is. And you also wonder, you've asked us this question, if there are other parents who have emailed in with similar problems. No, you are the only person, Ross, that has reached out to us and told us your story. So what to do is essentially what you're asking. Only two decisions here, Ross. You either respect your daughter's wishes or you say, I'm not comfortable with you going in with your girlfriend, so I'm not going to give you the money, the deposit for the property. We all know that the second option, you're not going to do that. So option one is the only option. However, the crucial part, I would say, to getting this right is having your lawyer have a contract drawn up between the two girls that is watertight. What happens if this takes place, or God forbid something happens in this scenario? That is going to give you some peace of mind for covering off the unimaginable circumstances that we all know that can take place in this scenario. So good luck with that. Great to have you as a listener, and do let us know how all of that plays out. And similarly, if you are a parent in a similar situation to what we've just explained from Ross, let us know. Our email address is myrealestatepodcast@gmail.com. Well, right now, on our Friday morning, as we work towards the weekend, let's catch up with Jeremy Britton in Queensland. And Jeremy, good morning to you. I know that we spoke about a year ago. What would you do if you were Ross in that situation?
Mate, I'd be just conscious that everyone's 24, they think they know everything. But then when you get to 44 or 54, you realise that you didn't know a lot. And a mortgage is generally a 25 to 30 year commitment. So for those of us who are, sort of 40 or 50, how many of your high school friends are you still in touch with? Maybe 2% or 3%. Situations change, relationships change, marriages break up, friends don't stay friends for 25 years. So I'd be sticking with Ross and saying, hey, his bond with his daughter's never going to change. The girlfriend may change over time. So either have a rock solid contract or just say, he can give his money to the daughter. The girlfriend can rent perhaps until that situation changes. But yeah, it's a 30-year commitment. So you really got to make sure you've got a watertight contract and make sure who owns what, because, if they split up, break up, move on, one of them dies, it's going to create a lot of problems down the track.
Do you know of these types of younger people that have actually got the daughter's strong independence? Clearly, I mean, you got to tip the hat off here, because it's easy to take the money, especially from parents. It's not so easy to say, Dad, I love you. I love the fact that you're going to put some money in, but I don't want as much money as you're prepared to put in for me to become this sole owner of the property. I mean, it's very unusual. Maybe it's not. It's just unusual to my ear.
That's a great thing. But, maybe Ross could be the co-owner of the property until such a time as she's got the finance or the equity to buy him out. Whatever works in their situation, I'd say it's strongly a conversation they need to have with their family lawyer, and just look at all the things that can possibly happen, which may include, if she's co-owner with the girlfriend and the girlfriend, unfortunately dies or moves on to another relationship or something like that, then that's going to throw an extra spinner in the works where she's actually a co-owner of a property. There's all sorts of things, and the lawyer's the best person to look at every single scenario and plug all those leaks before they occur.
Just remind us, how big is your portfolio and what have you added to that, or if you have added to that in the last 12 months?
Yeah, so we've got 3 properties in Brisbane, a couple of properties in Byron Bay in New South Wales, and just in the last month, been looking at property in Bali.
Wow. Okay, tell us about that. That's really interesting, because we have had emails that have come through where younger people have decided to quit Australia and head off. We've had them moving to Bali, Vietnam, we got an email from. Cost of living, cost of properties, much, much cheaper.
That's right. I actually lived in Bali for 2 years in 2014 and 2015. The cost of living is significantly cheaper. You've got to keep a handle on things because there's always something going on. There's always parties. There's always friends coming over who are there for a good time, not a long time. The cost of living is 25 to 30% of what it is in Australia. But yeah, you have to keep a lid on things because otherwise, my friend lived over there for 3 years, but he ended up employing a driver to drop his kids at school and another person to go grocery shopping for him and another person to clean his pool and mow his lawn. drawn, and all of a sudden he had 9 staff and he wasn't actually saving that much money, but he was saving a lot of time.
We connect you to the best real estate information across Australia. The Real Estate Podcast.